Number 1.
Gaylin Rose stood outside her home, dressed in a nightgown, frantically yelling to her children. Coming from inside the burning home were the desperate screams of 4 little girls. A neighbor, Jeff Cook, rushed out of his home. He saw the flames shooting through his neighbor's home. And then, through the fog of smoke, he saw Rose. I failed, she told him. I couldn't get my babies." Sobbing, Rose lamented to Cook that, as much as she had tried, the power of the black smoke had beaten her back from her girls' bedrooms. Others tried too. But the flames engulfed the Flora home so rapidly it looked hopeless from the start. Soon, the screams subsided. From a distance, a neighbor watched firefighters bring the girls' bodies out on stretchers. Kiana Davis, 11, Kiara Phillips, 9, Carrielle McDonald, 7, and Kiani Welch, 5, died in the early morning hours of November 21, a Monday, in their home. And more than 7 months later, the people in Flora, a town with 2,000 that is barely larger than 1 square mile, are mired in grief, fear and suspicion, still wondering if the fire was intentionally set. Rumors fly freely with few facts available to counter them. Reminders of the fire linger on the quiet Flora street. The boarded-up remains of a house in Flora, Indiana, on Wednesday, July 5, 2017. The house was damaged in a fire that killed 4 and injured 1 in November. The residence, a duplex with 2 apartments, stands on a corner just steps from Flora's downtown. The home is blackened by soot and smoke, but children's toys are strewn across the porch, untouched by the blaze. Even now, gusts of wind carry the burned, acrid smell of the home across the neighborhood. And the screams of the little girls still haunt those who remain. After years of setbacks, Tracy Rose and his family were building a life in Flora. Rose, the grandfather of the girls, went to prison for drug crimes when his daughter, Gaylin, was 12. In 2011, he came back into her life and into the lives of his grandchildren after he was released from prison and became sober. He moved to Flora when his aunt found him work there. Gaylin Rose, 29, at times struggled as a single mother, her father said. She eventually followed him to Flora from Missouri to be close to family. Through her father, Gaylin Rose said she was not prepared to talk about the loss of her daughters for this story. She and her daughters lived with her father for 8 months, Tracy Rose said, until Gaylin secured her own apartment with more space. The apartment, the first floor of the duplex that burned, had a large front porch on a tree-lined street. The girls were often playing with each other outside, neighbors said. They were friendly and polite, often saying hello to those that lived nearby. They played with my dog, recalled Chastity Fox, a neighbor. They were the first ones that got her to fetch. She never fetched before. The Friday before the fire, Tracy Rose was supposed to be packing for a trip to Tennessee. He was beset with a feeling that he didn't want to go out of town, though he wasn't sure why. Rose lives in a small, white house just blocks from where his daughter and granddaughters lived. The girls had a busy weekend ahead of them. They had a cheerleading competition on Saturday. Then, on Sunday, Kiana, the oldest, had a basketball game. Kiana loved basketball, and Rose predicted she would have been a star in high school. He often went to her games, cheering her on from the sidelines. On Sunday night, Rose got on the phone from Tennessee with his daughter, Gaylin, during Kiana's game. "What's she doing now?" Rose asked his daughter, who gave a play-by-play of the game. Hours later, he was awakened by a call. It was Gaylin. She said his granddaughters had been killed. "My girls was everything," Rose recently recalled in an interview with IndieStar, breaking down in tears. In his grief, he recalled the last time he saw his granddaughters. It was the Friday before the fire, and he was preparing to leave town the next day. The girls, who called him Paw Paw, had come to help him pack for the trip. They asked him not to go. "It was strange," Rose said. "They didn't want me to leave." The day after the fire, the Department of Homeland Security in a statement said the cause of the blaze was still undetermined, but it may have started in the kitchen of the lower unit where Gaylin Rose's family lived, possibly behind the refrigerator. 2 months later, the department released information that rocked the small town. Investigators found accelerants in the structure and ruled it an arson fire. Investigators declined to talk more about the investigation and would not offer more details about the type of accelerants found. Officials have not released information about any suspects. They say they are no longer speaking publicly about the case. It remains under investigation. It seems like it's a cold case already, said Fox, the neighbor. The uncertainty has led to a creeping anxiety in the town, particularly when paired with another recent tragedy suffered in Carroll County. Just 8 miles from Flora, Liberty German and Abigail Williams were killed in Delphi in February, another unsolved killing that has resulted in unease and suspicion. Flora has commemorated the 6 girls with a bench engraved with each girl's name and age. Flowers lay on the seat. Eve Gibson, a Flora resident, put her face in her hands and cried when she spoke about the girls. They can't let that go, Gibson said, speaking about the investigation and the lack of recent news. They were 4 innocent little girls. Gibson said people in town have speculated on who might have set the fire, including wondering if any family members could have done it. Such talk angers Fox. She watched the girl's mother scream in pain, powerless to save her children. Everybody wants to point the finger at someone else, Fox said. It really hurts. A recent local news report offered a twist that, for some, raised questions about whether the fire was actually intentionally set. WTHR-TV in June reported that arson investigator Dennis Randall resigned after a private investigator who was consulting on the case questioned whether the state hastily reached its conclusion about arson. In a letter to the Indiana Department of Homeland Security and Indiana Fire Marshal James Greason posted by WTHR, the consultant, whose name is redacted, writes that the state's conclusions are not correct and completely based on speculation, not evidence. Tracy Rose believes the fire was an accident and is upset about the rumors swirling around town. He says the family has no enemies in Flora. I don't like talkers, Rose said. An IDS spokesperson confirmed that Randall resigned but declined to answer further questions, referring them to Indiana State Police. IndyStar filed a public records request for the letter from the private investigator, as well as all related correspondence. Officials have acknowledged the request and told IndyStar it is under review. ISP, though, stands by the conclusion that the fire was intentionally set, said Captain Dave Burston. Carroll County Prosecutor Robert Ives also said he believes the fire was intentional, based on his knowledge of the investigation. These are horrible, terrible tragedies, Ives said, speaking about the killings in Delphi and Flora. This is the worst time I can ever remember in Carroll County. Now, the residents of Flora are left to wonder whether there is a killer in their midst. This used to be a very open and friendly community, Cook said. The town is still open, we're just nervous. The day after the fire, Fox's husband had to call off work. Her brother became sick. Fox herself had trouble breathing. The 27-year-old woman who lives just steps from the home grows tearful when she thinks about what Gaylin Rose is going through. But she also sees the scars the fire left on the neighborhood. To hear the girls screaming for their mom, Fox said, it's the most devastating thing anyone can hear. Fox and her husband stepped out of their apartment the night of the fire to look at what they first thought was a strange, dense fog. They quickly realized it was smoke. Then, the flames engulfed the home. They, too, felt powerless. Fox said her brother considered running into the home to help, but they had watched emergency personnel try to enter, only to be forced back out. That night, Tracy Rose was stuck in Tennessee, but stayed on the phone with his daughter for as long as he could. Now, his home is still cluttered with his granddaughter's toys, signs of their presence everywhere. Rose keeps their school pictures with him in his car. He just experienced the first 4th of July holiday without the girls. The girls, he said, his voice shaking. They was my heart. Authorities are asking the community for help solving the case by calling the Indiana State Arson Hotline at 1-800-382-4628. Callers can remain anonymous. Police are also offering a reward of up to $5,000 for information that leads to an arrest. Citizens can donate to the reward fund by sending a check to the Indiana Department of Homeland Security at 302 Watts, Washington Street, Room E 208, Indianapolis, in 46204. To ensure the donation goes to the appropriate account, the memo line should read Flora Fire Reward. How tragic and heartbreaking. My heart goes out to Ms. Rose and the rest of the family. Who the fuck will burn down a house with children inside? It's fucking evil and death penalty worthy. Rest in peace to those precious beautiful angels. Hope they receive justice.
Number 2.
It was a 2007 Chevy that gunned its engine and sped away from the scene on Detroit's west side. The driver had been speeding up and down the street for a while. He touched his brakes when he heard a guy ask, "Why are you driving so fast?" It wasn't a pushy tone, it wasn't rude, but he stopped the car and opened his door, pulling out a handgun. He fired 6 or 7 shots, slammed the door shut, and took off. His target was Chris Rankin, 23, in that neighborhood on that October night to celebrate his birthday. The bullet hit his sister Jada, 15, the youngest in the family. The party was wrapping up, it was late, nearly 2 a.m. and the whole clan was outside crossing the street to go home. Jada was hit in the stomach. The driver of the Chevy was long gone by the time someone dialed 911. Another family member jumped in his car and chased the Chevy, but before he could get near the fleeing vehicle, he lost control of his car and slammed into a utility pole. He too was taken to a nearby hospital. All murders are tragic, but when a child is killed, the future disappears. For Jada's mother, the legacy of her youngest child is kindness, strength, and forgiveness. She lost her life in 2016, but it could have happened the way it did that night just as easily 10 years before or last week, since shootings have become the new normal in American life. Tawana Rankin isn't the first mother to start a foundation in the face of a murdered child, and tragically she won't be the last. She wants to carry forth Jada's spirit and light into the future. Her daughter was a straight-A student who tutored special needs kids and was a kicker on her high school football team. She looked out for other family members. She had a reputation as someone who stood up to bullies. Back in Jada's hometown of Sterling Heights, the principal of her high school wrote in a notice on the district's website, "It is with great sadness I report that one of our students, sophomore Jada Rankin, was tragically killed last night. Our thoughts and prayers go out to her family at their very difficult time." Jada was the sort of person who would have made a positive impact on the lives of others she already had. She was 15 years old and beginning her second year of high school when she was shot to death because a man with a gun decided to fire into a crowd of strangers who pissed him off. She lived just long enough to get to medical help before dying on a hospital bed. Tawana already had 3 sons when Jada was born, and her wish for a girl was answered. Her baby girl was her last child. The family lived in Sterling Heights, but their grandmother was on the west side, so from the time Jada was young, she visited West Detroit for holidays and family celebrations. Tawana holds no anger in her heart for her daughter's killer. She sent him a message through the media, "I actually forgive you, I just want you to know that you made a bad decision on October 16th. There is a $7,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest of the man behind the wheel of the 2007 Chevy that was speeding around Detroit's west side on October 16, 2016. Jada's cousin, Belante Cobb, remembered her as an exceptional person. Jada was loved by everyone, he said. She would do anything for anybody. She was there for me, Cobb told the Detroit News. He was afflicted with cerebral palsy and couldn't walk. Jada was the one pushing me in my wheelchair. She was never judgmental and was always there for her family and friends. Belante and Jada shared a grandmother, Minnie. She was the sweetest child, so smart and so good, said Minnie Cobb, remembering her grandchild. A family, a high school, and a city lost another bright light. It happened 5 years ago, but it could have been yesterday. It went down in Detroit, but it could have been in your town. We can't stop shootings until we stop selling 40 million guns every year. The violence and murder aren't a mystery. But the mystery of Jada's murder remains unsolved. The man who shot her is still at large, probably living somewhere in the Detroit area. On April 25, 2021, the family gathered with other families who have lived through the pain of gun violence and its aftermath. Tawana, a leader in that community, spoke about how Jada's murder changed her. I wanted to fold, but the more I stood, the more I heard there were more murders out there, more children, more mamas like me that came to me saying, "What do I do?" Rankin told the Detroit News. "I didn't know what to do. There's no rule book to this, but you have to surround yourself with people that love you." Police believe the vehicle involved was a gray or silver sedan, possibly a mid-2000 Chevy Impala or Lumina. If you have any information about who murdered Jada Rankin, call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-SPEAK-UP. They offer a $13,500 reward paid in cash, and you will remain anonymous.
Number 3.
Jonah Golden was only 19 years old when he was shot to death during the early morning hours of April 23, 2016. Jonah lived in Jacksonville, Florida, and on the evening of April 22, he attended a party at a home in Ortega Farms. Just hours before he went to the party, Jonah posted an ominous message on Facebook, stating, "If today my last day, just make sure I come home to you, Lord." While it's not believed that Jonah knew that violence would erupt at the party that night, the Facebook post suggests he had a premonition that something bad was going to happen. The men who threw the party said that they invited around 25 to 30 people, but more and more people started to show up as the night continued. Police were reportedly called to the home 3 times that night before things turned violent. The initial police calls came from neighbors who complained about the number of cars parked on their street and the noise level of the party. The police did not break up the party following those calls. The men throwing the party said that they eventually tried to break up the party themselves but were unable to gain control of the situation. Fights began to break out, and around 2:30 a.m., shots began firing. Jonah ended up being shot and killed in the front yard. Another 18-year-old male was shot as well, but survived the injuries. The police were called again, but the shooters fled the scene before the officers arrived. Months after the shooting, investigators announced that they were searching for a person of interest named Kyan Wilkes, pictured below. Investigators did not elaborate on whether or not they believe Kyan was involved in the shooting, however they did state that they believe he has information about the incident. Now that years have passed since the shooting occurred, it is unclear if investigators still consider Kyan to be a person of interest. Jonah's family members are hoping to one day receive answers in his case. They believe that there are individuals who attended that party who have yet to come forward with information. There is an $8,000 reward in place for anyone with information that could lead to Jonah's killer. If you have any information that could help the investigation, please contact 866-945-8477 to submit a tip.
Number 4.
Joshua Redfield was reported missing by his mother on December 8, 2016. The 18-year-old was last seen by his family members the previous day. Joshua left his family's Ogden, New York, that afternoon after telling his mother that he was going to go visit his sister. He reportedly never arrived to see his sister, and he never returned home. After not hearing from him for 24 hours, Joshua's mother reported him missing. 5 days later, investigators appealed to the public for any information about Joshua's disappearance. A large aerial search of the area was conducted, but unfortunately no clues were found. Additionally, detectives were assigned to work the case full-time, but they were unable to locate Joshua or find any clues that led to his whereabouts. Those closest to Joshua were extremely baffled by his disappearance. It was unusual for him to be out of touch with his 8 siblings and his close friends. According to Joshua's mother, his loved ones held out hope that he just needed to get away for a while and would eventually return home. In February 2017, a man named Dan Elliott was arrested in connection to an illegal gambling investigation in Rochester. His arrest led to speculation that Joshua's disappearance was somehow related to the gambling investigation. The speculation was likely due to the fact Joshua's stepbrother was serving jail time at the time of his disappearance for breaking into and trying to burn down an alleged illegal gambling joint in Rochester. However, the detectives working Joshua's case said they were unable to find a link between Joshua's disappearance and the gambling investigation. A few weeks later, on February 18, 2017, An unnamed witness called police after spotting a body on the north bank of the Erie Canal in Spencerport. Just days later, the body was confirmed to be that of Joshua Redfield. The spot where he was found is located just blocks away from his family's home. Since the discovery of Joshua's body, there has been very little news about the investigation into his death. A cause of death has still never been made public. Joshua's case remains unsolved. If you have any information that could help solve the case, please go here to submit an anonymous tip.
Number 5.
Kenshin Ward, Shante Bohannon, Joanna Wright and Marlo Gully were all residents of the same neighborhood in the south side of Chicago, Illinois. Kenshin, 21, and Shante, 20, were dating, while Joanna, 33, and Marlo, 26, were friends. All four of them knew each other, which makes the following tragic chain of events all the more mysterious. On July 13, 2016, Kenshin was tragically murdered in Marquette Park, located in the Chicago Lawn neighborhood. He had been shot multiple times. A few people, including Shante, witnessed the shooting, but did not see the shooter's face. Nobody has ever been arrested in connection with Kenshin's death, and his killer remains at large. Additionally, there are very few details available about the investigation. 11 days later, on July 24, 2016, Shante mysteriously vanished. She was last seen near a home in the Marquette Park area. When she failed to return home, her parents reported her missing. Just a few days later, police received an anonymous tip that there was a dead body in a condemned garage located near where Shante was last seen. When police followed up, they found Shante's body in a garbage can inside the garage. An autopsy apparently could not make a ruling on her cause of death. A few months went by without any mainstream news on Kenshin and Shante's cases. Then, on December 18, 2016, Joanna Wright was taking a walk near her home in Marquette Park when she was kidnapped by a group of unidentified men in the broad daylight. A person who witnessed the event immediately called the police. The witness said that 3 men grabbed Joanna and started dragging her towards a vehicle. She tried to scream and fight them off, but they were still able to force her into the car and drive away. The car was described as a blue newer model Mazda with an Ohio license plate. After the initial reports about the kidnapping, mainstream news about Joanna's case became scarce. However, community activists continued to share their thoughts. Many believed that Kenshin and Shante's deaths were related, and they also did not think it was a coincidence that Joanna had been violently kidnapped from the very same neighborhood. Despite this, news about all 3 cases seemed to fade away due to the lack of updates in the investigations. Still, the residents of Marquette Park remained fearful that there were violent offenders on the loose in their community. Then, on October 26, 2017, yet another Marquette Park resident went missing, 26-year-old Marlo Gully. He was last seen near the house where Shante was last seen before she was reported missing, located on the same street where Joanna was kidnapped. Marlo was reported missing by his girlfriend, who was pregnant with his child, after he failed to show up to their sonogram appointment. A search turned up no clues, and he still remains missing today. While it has never been confirmed that any of these cases are related to one another, possible links are being investigated. It is quite notable that all 4 victims knew each other and that Kenshin and Shante were found dead in the same neighborhood from which Joanna and Marlo vanished. Chicago police are investigating each case. If you have any information that could lead to answers in any of the cases, please contact the Chicago Police Department at 312-747-8380.
Number 6.
December 2018 marked 2 years since the disappearance of Matthew Grant. He was reported missing in December 2016, but 2 weeks later he was found murdered in Browning. His family recalls him as a very happy 21-year-old who smiled a lot and had a good sense of humor. Matthew moved from Canada to Browning, Montana in October 2016. He wanted a better life for himself. To him, America was a better place, a better home, and a better family life, Matthew's Aunt Rhonda Grant Connolly said. Grant Connolly says she took him thinking that as a blessing, but something she says now she took for granted. We drove by Chief Mountain and he said, "Auntie, can we stop, and can I take a picture of Chief Mountain?" I said, "Sure you can," Grant Connolly recalls. He gets out, looks around and goes, "Ah, America." But 2 months later, their lives changed forever. A young gentleman got out of the vehicle, knocked and asked for Matthew. Matthew jumped up, and he was in his room. Fonda Matthew's aunt, who he was living with, asked him where he was going. He said, "I'll be right back." That was the last time she saw him, Grant Connolly said. Social media took off with family members begging the community for help. "I called everyone. I told them we need to start looking. Start searching in alleys, vacant lots, and homes because we don't know. We have no idea, and that's the only place we can start," Grant Connolly said. That's when Belinda Bulshu and Diana Bird stepped in to help the family. "How do you do a search party?" We Googled it. I Googled how to do a grid search. How to make sure that everybody is safe so that you don't have somebody lost in a blizzard, Bird said. We had followed up on a location, hoping just to figure out if he was there. If not there, was there anything that could lead us to where he could have possibly went or walked away from? Bulshu said. The family continued to helplessly search. We were caught up in so much grief and not knowing. It's hard when a person does not know what happened to a loved one, Grant Connolly said. We'd hear rumors, so we would check them out to see if Matthew was there. Everyone would get upset with us because we would ask those questions. We weren't trying to indicate that they were actually involved in the disappearance. It was the idea that we had a lead and we wanted to find out exactly if they had any idea of where he was at. It would take law enforcement 10 days to finally help the family in the search for Matthew. I think the hard part was that we weren't getting the help from the police. We had a couple PF people set up a search party. It was something that no one knew how to do. No resources, no protocols for situations like this. So people have to take it into their own hands to look for their loved ones, Matthew's cousin Shannon Connolly said. On December 31st, 16 days later, Matthew's body was found. He had frozen ice in his hair. Snow-covered. His shirt was partially pulled up like someone lifted him out of a vehicle and just tossed him there, Rhonda Grant Connolly said. There have been no arrests made for his case. These people are running in our communities, and the majority of the community knows who they are. Yet, we just sit there, and we're at the mercy of the state, Bird said. I can't rust. I don't know who was involved, but I know there was a lot involved. The rumors, it's hard. I shy away from people now, Rhonda Grant Connolly said. We're hoping our story will make some change on the reservation. Take our cries serious, Shannon Connolly said. We will have more on the ongoing investigation with the FBI and what legislation is doing for missing and murdered Indigenous people.
Number 7.
21-year-old Sydney Land had just met 20-year-old Neo Kauffman in the summer of 2016. The two seemed to fall head over heels quickly. Sydney lied to her family about moving out on her own. She told her mom she was moving in with friends, but really she moved in with Neo. The relationship, according to many witnesses, was not healthy. Several people who interacted with the couple reported back to Sydney's mother Connie of Neo's worrisome behavior. According to one, he was controlling, and another, he used abusive language. Connie tried to get Sydney out of the relationship and to come back home. Despite Connie's best efforts, Sydney stayed. On October 8, Neo was seen arguing with Shane Valentine, a XXX, in the parking lot of the Red Rock Casino. The exact subject of the argument is not known, although some witnesses claim it was over a gun. Later that day, to continue the confrontation, Valentine shot at Neo's mother's house. No one was injured, and Neo wasn't home at the time. On October 26, Sydney was supposed to meet friends out and then stay at the Link Hotel on the Las Vegas Strip. The reservation was under her name. But despite Sydney not showing up, no one contacted her or seemed to be looking for her. The next day, her cousin sent her boyfriend to Sydney's apartment because she couldn't reach her. When he arrived, he found the door unlocked. Once inside, he saw Neo on the floor of the living room and Sydney on the bedroom floor. Both Sydney and Neo had been shot in the face. The caliber of gun has not been confirmed by law enforcement. In addition to the gunshot wound, Sydney had many abrasions on her shoulders, forearms, knees and lower legs. The investigation into Sydney and Neo's death revealed that Neo may have been trying to groom Sydney into sex work. Law enforcement hasn't confirmed that Sydney participated, and her mother strongly believes Sydney would not have. But there is evidence that Neo was a part of that industry. No motive has been reported for why Neo and Sydney were killed. But between Neo's confrontation with Shane Valentine weeks earlier and his attempting to become a bigger part in the sex work industry, several theories continue to circulate the area. Shane Valentine was arrested for shooting at Neo's mother's home. He is currently in prison for charges stemming from that night and hasn't been charged with Neo or Sydney's murders.